Yeah, let's dig into the Bari Weiss
Sure.
CBS thing that you alluded to before. I have a very surface level understanding of what's going on here, but it's also confusing to me because you said that the shift is an ideological one. To me, CBS I always grouped in with ABC, NBC as kind of like left wing, media.
Okay, well, not as okay. Well, the truth is, I think if you ask NBC, ABC, and CBS, they would view themselves as center. I think they would
Okay.
describe themselves as being impartial. Whereas Fox would be like, we represent, if not the right, conservative values, and MSNBC is like, down with fascism. But so they describe themselves as such. When Larry Ellison, founder of Oracle, worth over 100 billion, if not more, started to bankroll his son David Ellison, who kind of his sister too, Annapurna. So there was a family where the kids were not drawn to software like Papa. They were drawn to media. And to their credit, at least they're working and they're ambitious, right? I mean, I respect born on third base kids who actually hustle instead of just go living on a beach somewhere, although that's not a bad thing to do. But so David Ellison kind of acted and produced the movie, and then he bought Skydance, and to his credit, funded a lot of movies, won a bunch of awards, and built his credibility. And people view him as a credible, competent executive, very ambitious, which I cannot complain anybody for ambition. And so he eventually realized that like Skydance had kind of reached its plateau with regards to how big it could get. And in media, when you now see the power of tech platforms, not just tech platforms, Google, but even the Netflixes, he realized he needed to get bigger. So Paramount, formerly known as Viacom, that owns CBS News and owns MTV and VH1, was kind of on the market because the Redstone family, when Sumner Redstone, another OG media entrepreneur, passed away, Sherry, the daughter, took over, who is not like a 40-year-old executive. She's a bit older. So she also had to think of transitions and to crystallize the value of this massive asset that over time was going down just because of shifts in technology. So Netflix ended up acquiring Warner Brothers, right? But after Skydance bought Paramount, which includes CBS, people were like, okay, what does that mean for CBS that historically was arm's length? Like Viacom, okay, maybe Paramount maybe could like kind of have a point of view on a given topic, but it wasn't necessarily like they would dictate to MTV or VH1 what to do. It was like, you're a culture thing, do your own thing. News is always sacrilegious, or like church and state, let them report the news, even if there's always a slant. But after the first few months, I think in light of what's happened, frankly, since October 7th, Larry Ellison, who is a Zionist and he's very pro-Israel, I think him and his son David, who are both very pro-Israel, they were like, and this is like projecting, this is speculating, but just for the sake of our audience, I think they were just like, well, yeah, if we own this asset, it's 2025. The stakes have changed. The media world has changed. You got all these left-wingers. You got all these pro-Palestinian voices. So they kind of wanted to take CBS in a more right of center point of view, specifically probably with regards to the Holy Land, which we covered on a previous episode.
Yeah.
So when they saw that the leaders, the editor-in-chiefs and the managing editorial directors, whatever, of CBS were still a bit too center for their liking, David Ellison went out and bought Bari Weiss's company for $150 million, which, again, not being privy to her financial statements, it was kind of widely assumed that they had overpaid just because they really wanted Bari Weiss, who was like, a journalist, blogger, writer, researcher, like somebody who used to write for, I think, the New York Times, I think got let go, started her own company to her credit. So she had that entrepreneurial drive. And she kind of like got some traction enough for CBS to take her seriously to the point of buying, I think, her company, the Free Press. But it was also like, we can't pretend that this wasn't one incentive. It was to bring on a very right of center, and I'm not calling her right wing extreme. I'm just saying right of center, and a very pro-Israel Zionist perspective, which, yes, if you are CBS, a traditional journalist, might be alarming. And I think some people have left. So the reason why I think it comes up is not the right of center or left of center, because again, you have opinions and you have slants. It's more that if you are the company of Ed Murrow and the company of like, that was like, the Tiffany Network was like the gold standard of news and reporting and objectivity. Yes, if you've been working there for 10, 15, 5, 20 years, and all of a sudden you have this gal, Bari Weiss, it's like if it's not that different, frankly, than if like, whatever, Disney bought WatchMojo and was like, Ash is running whatever. Even if I'm super competent, I would be intellectually dishonest if I wasn't like, this is going to raise some eyebrows internally. They're going to have some questions. But my style would be to sit down, explain, saying, I'm not here to change anything. I'm here to help you improve things to the extent you see areas to improve. But Bari Weiss has kind of come, kicked in the door. As an entrepreneur, I understand. And she's like a tornado who's like, we got to be the news. If you are CBS, that is not what you want to hear. You don't want to be the news. You understand? Like, this is like the culture shock. Like, we have companies that want to buy WatchMojo, and they're always like, you guys could videofy things. When Time Inc. wanted to buy us to videofy Fortune, Time, SI people, when, all these other, way back before the Ellisons, MTV wanted to buy us because they're like, we need something like WatchMojo. I would say, okay, well, I'm not going to come and tell your team how to do their business, but we could certainly improve with video, with digital, with speed, yada, yada. So I think this is not so much like a right-wing, left-wing issue. That is one of it. I think it's more a culture in terms of an entrepreneurial person who is coming in and kind of chipping away, chiseling away at what media and news is supposed to be, which is neutral and very proper and whatnot. And again, if you're the news, you're generally supposed to be, even if journalists, everybody has pride and ego, even if you're supposed to not be the news, you do think you're the news. You do think you're a bit of a rock star. Journalists they're human beings. But so I think it's a fascinating case study of when a traditional organization acquires a very small, nimble, entrepreneurial person as an acqui-hire, an organization, and expecting that to go smoothly. And it never goes smoothly, right? So that's what makes it fascinating, because hearing her say we should drive the news and produce things that are viral, it's not that much crazier than when, let's say, NBC was like, you know what, Jimmy Fallon, yeah, okay, you're going to produce a show that looks like the show of Carson or Leno, but we're going to change it like bottom up instead of top down, because we want to program for YouTube. We want to have skits or sketches or segments, actually, that could go viral. So not absolving her, what she's doing, what she's trying to do is no different than what NBC does with Fallon and Colbert did with his show, to come up with like episodes for digital. But when it's news, it's like sacrilegious. It's a bit weird to say that. You could wink, hint at that. But I understand all sides, which is why I'm so blocked by people.
Wasn't one of the big points of contention what happened with 60 Minutes episode that was pulled, right? Like shortly before airing, that was dealing with some prison or something. There was like an expose, and then there was concerns about what the administration would think about this, and that's why it was kind of pulled. And then people were like, oh, well, she's just pandering to the White House, basically.
Yeah, so let's be fair. I understand. Let's start off, and this isn't going to be too much both-sidism. But at the onset, I understand if she comes in, or anybody. It's not about her, but if anybody comes as like a new leader and wants to improve, I understand why it does take confidence, assertiveness, boldness to say, "Hey, wait, there's a problem." It's like you're a chef. Think of Gordon Ramsay. Just because the plate has been served, tabled, like it's presented, but if you notice that there's a hair in the chicken, you don't send it out to the client just because it's been tabled or plated. Sorry, not tabled, like plated. You should have the courage to say, hey, sir, the client, there's been a delay. We'll have you something. Can I get you a drink in the meantime, right? So I don't blame her for that if there was, and I don't know the specifics to go if it was fair or not, but I think that is a good trait as a leader. I think you don't want to just be like, hey, there's a big pile of poop on this hamburger, but it's all good, right? So that I think is good. The problem is, given the sensitivity in America, given Trump derangement syndrome, given that, hey, for-profit prisons, which was the subject, I believe, is a very touchy thing. Yeah, I mean, not that Bari Weiss or the Ellisons are seeking my advice. Even my team doesn't seek my advice sometimes. But I personally think I would have said, look, because 60 Minutes is an institution, people expect this every Sunday. We'll release it. Monday, no, nobody should get too flustered. But maybe Tuesday, we're going to sit down and discuss it and be like, what could we have done better, right? So I think it doesn't help her by putting more bullseyes on her back for her critics to be like, oh, not just she's coming and she wants to be the news and doesn't understand reporting, doesn't get church and state, but on top of that, she's basically a censorship filter for the Trump admin. Like, that's where I think sometimes entrepreneurs, yeah, it's good to go get experience. It's good to go read a business book. It's good to have your, eat some humble pie. Because you don't want to give your denigrators more reasons to take you down. They already have enough reasons because you're just built differently. So, was it more censoring for Trump? Well, it wasn't not censoring for Trump. It's pretty clear what the causality was. But I think that is more of like a managerial mistake, because I think it's like the Streisand effect. If she would have just let it slide and discussed it privately on Tuesday, I think her team would have probably respected her more. But the fact that she kind of just said, no, we're going to not do this. Yeah, she probably lost a lot of credibility with a lot of people. And CBS lost a lot of credibility with a lot of people. And now 60 Minutes, I'm not saying this was irreparably harmed, but 60 Minutes cannot really credibly look at their viewers and listeners and say that they are not compromised to some extent,
Yeah. Did you think that CBS needed saving in the way that probably Ellison thought it did?
So this is where let's go back. I think Ellison, Papa or son, were like, yeah, why are we funding an operation that's chanting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free? Not saying that's what CBS did. Like, I don't want to be sitting here and going, that wasn't part of it. I think they wanted somebody who could come in and just present a point of view that they were more aligned with. And I think that's probably 49 or 51%. It's a sizable amount. But I think it's also that, given that Larry Ellison, one of the greatest brilliant visionaries in business history, not just software, and David being clearly a very ambitious guy, they were going to do something. So that something was more the entrepreneurial acqui-hire thing. I personally think it was, I'll just say it, I think it was a mistake for them to not individually. It's their right if they want a more pro this or that slant. They're the owners. That individually is fine. They want to get entrepreneurial, Mojo in, that's fine. A lot of companies do that. Like when NVIDIA buys a company, or like when Mark Zuckerberg buys some AI company when Mark Zuckerberg bought WhatsApp for 19 billion or Instagram for $1 billion when it had 13 employees, people thought he was crazy, but he was crazy in a good way. Those are two engines of his empire now. But when you add the third one, that you also immediately take somebody like her, who was going to piss off half of the journalists, assume half are pro-Israel, half are pro-Palestine. Anybody you just parachute suddenly is going to alienate half. I think the trifecta was a mistake, and it's not a fatal mistake. It's not like, some kind of hack that is going to take them down or some kind of major lawsuit. But I do think that is when you start eroding these great brands. Whether you agree with them or not, CBS, the Tiffany Network, is a great brand. And so you have to be careful. 60 Minutes is a tremendous brand, right? 60 Minutes before could have told advertisers, hey, you are running your ads for some pharmaceutical. We're going to criticize some other drug, which indirectly is criticizing pharmaceutical, but we're 60 Networks, 60 Minutes, church and state. They cannot really say that anymore, because somebody could be like, no. If you're going to self-censor for Donald Trump and you're going to slant for Israel, then how do I know you're not going to also, for our money, adjust your editorial? You see, I criticize everybody. It's not like I'll give praise, but it's just like, that's where I think David Ellison young, like, we all make mistakes. Like he'll learn whether he admits it or not. I think he might be like, yeah, in hindsight, I could have waited 6 months. I could have waited 3 months. I could have put Bari in these positions where she earns the trust instead of force feeding her to a group of which half is going to disagree with her.